Hello YouTube, it's Matt here, and in our large-scale renovation of this very old house that we're doing, I'm trying to turn this into the smartest home possible, and as part of that, I've been very carefully considering how I do light switches and what cabling I need to bring to them and how to terminate that cabling. And so in this video, I'm going to be discussing that. Okay, so if you're not familiar with this subject, you might be thinking, why don't you just wire your house up in the normal way like we've done for decades? And the answer is that this standard British way of doing light switches is not fit for purpose for the modern home. And by the way, I'm not talking about mains wiring, your 13 amp circuits, the things that sockets and plugs. I'm not talking about the things that you plug your toaster and your kettle into. I'm talking about light switches, which typically have a lot more user interaction on a daily basis than sockets anyway. You're switching lights on and off when you're walking into the room every day. And these, at least in the UK, traditionally have only had two cables, brown and blue, and the blue one is marked with a brown sheath indicating it is the one that goes to the light switch or switched live. And what it does, your switch, is it literally connects those two together, which completes the circuit and turns your light on. Now, that is pretty useless for most modern smart homes because you need to be able to dim a light, and you also need to be able to control that light remotely from your phone or whatever. Lots of solutions exist, like Philips Hue bulbs, and they're non-perfect, they're imperfect solutions, because if you wire your Philips Hue light bulb up to a normal light switch, you turn the light switch off. That means you can no longer control it remotely. There's loads of workarounds, but what we're talking really about here is doing it the right way and doing it in a future-proof way. And in the UK, we just don't have a standard. Now, in the US, I know you guys bring neutral and earth and live and switch live, I think, to your light switch, which gives you a lot more options because you can then put your dimmers, which are remotely controllable, into that back box where your light switch actually is, and you can do cool stuff with it. Actually, in the UK, we do bring neutral to the back box in many situations. It's more common in modern wiring schemes, but it's not a given. When you take a faceplate off of a light switch, you have no idea what you'll find behind it. It's likely to have neutral or not have neutral. In many old houses, it probably won't. And if you do find this blue wire coming into your back box, more often than not, it's been put there by a slightly more thoughtful electrician who thought that it might be useful to have it for later purposes, like putting a smart dimmer or smart switch or even just a dimmer behind the light switch in the back box. But I'm talking about something which is a little bit more modern than that. I'm talking about smart home wiring, which is where we would essentially bring data to the light switch, and then we would send messages from the light switch to a central controller, which then turns the light on or dims it up and down. And then you put all your dimmers and your switching stuff into a central location. This is clearly a better way of doing things, and there's no standard way of doing this. So what options are open to us for wiring up our homes in the most standard but future-proof way possible? Now, in Europe, a lot of buildings automation is done using a system called KNX, which has its own wiring scheme. And also in the rest of the world, every computer anywhere, every server, data center, etc., uses Cat6 or Cat5 or some form of Ethernet wiring. And that is pretty common as well. So rather than having to choose between the two, I just decided, right, let's just put both Cat6 and KNX in all of our light switches, and this will give us the best chance for a future-proof wiring system in the home. So what are the benefits of using two wiring systems instead of one? Well, those of you who know me know that I like to over-engineer things, and that's a good reason for me, but that is probably a bad reason in general, objectively, as to why to do something. But there are some really good reasons to having two systems. And the first one I would say is that they are complementary systems. So one, Cat6, is something that's been used in commercial building. I mean, it's installed in every commercial building in the world and has been for decades. It's the most standard wiring system for data, I think, that there is and has ever existed on the planet. KNX, on the other hand, certainly isn't, but it's much more dedicated to the purpose of buildings automation. So you've got that kind of complementary thing. And what a spin-off of that is that if you're ever worried that in 10 or 15 years' time, some new system might come out. It's more likely, I guess, to be Cat 6 than it is to be KNX. Whereas on the other hand, there's more kind of dedicated systems currently, perhaps more expensive, but more dedicated systems that do run on KNX. Another major reason, and this has been really helpful as I've been pulling cable, is cable topology. Now, Cat 6 uses a star topology, which is where you wire the end point, which is your light switch or your network port or your Wi-Fi access, but whatever it is, you wire your end point to a single central location in the building. You might have multiple central locations, but generally it's a star topology, whereas KNX is a bus topology, which means you daisy chain the next one to the previous one, which is great. I tell you, I found it really useful when wiring the building up, because if you kind of slightly change your mind, then you can just quickly pull a KNX cable from the nearest light switch rather than having to run a Cat 6 or run your cable all the way back to the central location, which you may have plasterboarded some of that up already, and it changes your wiring scheme, your wiring numbering scheme and all of that rubbish. So I would say with Cat 6 you need to plan ahead and really think through what you want where, which can be a very daunting task if you've got a very big build. You should do it, but you should also bear in mind that a bus topology gives you that additional flexibility should you want to change the placement, or just have two light switches there instead of one, or maybe you decide you want to have a switch for the blinds because you didn't realise you wanted blinds on the window. But you'd have to run a whole new cable, which might be 30 or 40 meters of cable, all the way back to your central location. And also star topologies use more physical wire. They take up more space. And when you're building an old building or renovating an old building like we are, space is at a premium in joists. We've already got something like 60 or 70 Cat 6 drops in the house, which is an insane number for somebody's home. But certainly KNX uses less cable. Those are the pros and cons of each system. But I would say using both covers you in all eventualities. And it essentially makes your home more saleable in the future. Now, another question you may encounter when you are wiring up your house in this way is, do I use Cat 5 or Cat 6 or Cat 7? What should I do? And I see this posted on so many kind of home automation groups and forums, and people who are undertaking this and getting their Sparkies or their data cabling guys to wire their house, and they're saying, should I be using 5, 6 or 7 or 7A or whatever? And the answer is, do what you want. I am really happy having 20 odd years of experience in IT and working with servers. I am really happy using Cat 5 to light switches. I still find it easier to work with. It's not as stiff, which means that you can coil it up more tightly in the back of light switches, in the back of the back boxes. And honestly, I find that gives a lot more flexibility in installation if you're going to do it. It takes up much less mass of space when you're running cables as well. So a pack of 24 Cat 5 cables together is just smaller than a pack of 24 Cat 6 or Cat 7. My advice is use Cat 5 for buildings automation. This is 2023, and you're probably thinking, oh, we need to be using the most latest, greatest cabling standards. Well, I'm really telling you, I think that's codswallop, because Cat 6 and Cat 7 give you something that Cat 5 already gives you when it comes to light switches, which is a data connection. A lot of Cat 5 will work on gigabit networking, but you do not need gigabit networking in a light switch, just it, period. If you want, use a combination like I've done in the home of Cat 6 and Cat 5, where I've used Cat 5, and actually I've put a lot of Cat 6 in light switches, and I wish that I had used Cat 5. And every time I go to terminate something, I think, ugh, if only I'd put Cat 5 in this light switch. I don't need Cat 6 in the light switch. And it does make a difference when you're working with it. If you're getting someone else to do the whole job, whatever, go Cat 6. Cost you more money. If you want to pay the money, go ahead. But if you're doing it yourself, really consider using Cat 5 for the reasons that I have mentioned. Now, with all that out the way, I'm now going to talk about how I actually go about terminating the Cat 6 or the Cat 5, and the KNX cable into the back boxes and what size back boxes I'm using. The first thing that I've standardised on everywhere in our build is this 47mm depth back box. Yes, you can go less. You certainly can go. Here's a KNX panel that I've already installed. This one's, I've powered the KNX circuit off, so I can't show you. And really you don't need 47mm back boxes, but you'll see here, as well as 2 twisted pair KNX cables coming in, I've also got this purple Cat 6 cable as well. Now, I've experimented with different lengths of tail coming out of this back box, and you can see this that's quite a lot, isn't it? And which means that, you know, when you connect your device to the black and red, you're going to need to push that back in. In this example, I'm kind of curling it back on itself and pushing it back in. I think that's good, but I've actually, I'm going a little bit less now than this. This was, I got this measurement for how much it comes out by doing the following. Essentially, what I would do is I would push the green cable right to the back top left corner, and I'd pull it out here. So I'd kind of push it in, and then I'd pull it out there, and then I'd measure 90mm of it sticking out, including, well, you know, plus the bit that goes to the back of the back box as well. So I guess if that's 47mm, exactly that would be 90 plus 47, but you know, it's never exact because there's a bit of a bend on the cable. But that's what I was aiming for now, but I'm now going for 80mm and not pushing it back. So I'm just kind of taking it from wherever it comes out. So on this one, I can see the cable comes out the top. I'll take it from this corner and just pull it straight out of that hole in this direction, and then measure 80mm from that corner. In the case where it comes out, you know, the cable might come into the box, say down in this side one, I would do the same from that corner. So here's another one, and my 90mm pushed back version gives you about that much. Let me just make this a bit brighter. Gives you about that much slack, which I think is, on reflection, too much. Here is another one, and you can see I've got 3 cables coming in here. And again, this was my 90mm pushback version, and I do think that's too much. I mean, that is more than, there's more than enough space to get a panel in of some kind. But I might find if I did want to put one of my touch panels, they go a bit deeper, and that might become an issue, but obviously I can always cut that back and do it again. I know you're dying to see one of my 80mm non-pushed back ones, and that is the amount of tail you get with the 80mm kind of coming out and with me not pushing it back before I measure it. So I'll show you what that looks like when I pull it out. It's a lot more lean. You can still easily, you know, get your device and connect it up to that and push it back in. So that's why I'm going to go with this from now on. And you can see I've cut this network cable shorter here as well. That one's ready to go. Now there's one exception to this 80mm rule, and that is if the back box is in a stud, or at least the wires come out in a stud and it's quite free and loose. Obviously you've got flexibility, and you want to keep that flexibility. You don't want to, there's no point in pulling this tight and then giving yourself 80mm if you can just kind of give yourself, you know, leave a whole load of slack there and give yourself 100mm and then push it back a bit. As long as that's loose and it's not kind of, you know, cable clipped down, that is the exception I'm giving. So anywhere where we've got some stud work behind there where you can just push it back, or it's not tight, I can just give myself as much as I like as long as I can push it back. Here, for example, not so much, because you can see the cables coming from different directions. I mean, okay, I could have given myself a bit of slack there, but yeah, not there. In that one, I did give myself loads of slack. In these, I did give myself quite a bit of slack, although actually one of the, because obviously KNX loops around the building, so that one, you know, one of these TP cables goes to there, and so I didn't give myself much there. So yeah, that's really the only exception. But yeah, certainly in ones like this, you can see you've got absolutely no wiggle room at all, because this is obviously we're going to dot and dab this wall, or whatever we're going to do. Maybe use some foam fix to fix board to the wall, and so yeah, that wiring is just going to be trapped. So there's no wiggle room in this one. Now, apologies, but the example back box that I'm going to terminate in this video is in my slightly tidy and not at all dusty server room, electrics room and boiler room. And so yeah, it's a bit noisy and it's a bit messy, but you're going to get the idea. Now this is coming out way too much, but on this occasion I can just push it back because it's a timber stud wall. So I'm not going to recut these. I'm just going to make sure that they come out approximately the same length, which they do. But if that were not the case, I'd be pulling there and I'd be measuring 80 millimeters, and I'd be marking off with my Sharpie on both of them, and then I'd be snipping with the scissors to 80 millimeters. But on this occasion, I'm not going to do that. But what I will do is I'm going to mark back, that was 80 I suggested there, and 40 of that is where I'm going to strip to. Right, I've positioned my phone in the server cabinet, so I'm going to speak loudly, and I'm sorry if I'm speaking too loudly, but here's what we're going to do. I'm going to mark it, get my trusty ruler out, and as mentioned, I'm going to mark to 40 as my Sharpie. It's actually a tracer pencil. I'm going to mark on one of them because I'm going to actually, do you know what? First of all, I'm going to cut this so that it's straight, so that I've got a nice straight edge to work to. It's not. There's one. It's worth noting that you need to really turn your KNX off if it's turned on. Obviously you don't want to be doing this on live KNX, you short cables out when you cut them. So pretend that I've measured to 80 mil, and now actually what I would do if I were measuring to 80 mil, let's say I'm doing that, is I'd put a little mark at 80 and a little mark at 40, but I'm not doing that as mentioned. So I'm going to measure 40 back from here, and put a little dot at 0, and then I'll replicate that dot on this one, and that is where, oops, I am stripping to. Let's get my strippers. I'm using for this some CK automatic wire strippers. These are kind of my preferred way of stripping sheath. Can you see that on the video? Yes, you can. So I'm just getting that in there, and when I do this, I like to kind of, I'll show you what I mean. That I like to have this, oops, wrap bags. This was in the way. Let's push this out. It's a bit more fiddly when you're trying to show someone on a video, isn't it? So I'll kind of twizzle this round so I can see the dot, and then I'll get that. It's not in the middle, but you can see kind of where that is, where that dot is in relation to the right hand blade, which is where it strips. That's just kind of experience. Maybe I could have gone a bit further. We'll do that one. Go a bit further on this one, perhaps. There we go. That's a bit better, isn't it? See that? I'll strip that. Yeah, that's still not great. These strippers are not fab. They're not fab at all. And if you wanted to do a nice job, you'd use those ones that kind of go around. In fact, why don't I show you that? Perhaps the light is not so good here, but anyway, here's the little ones that go round. A little bit of scrap here. Chuck it in there like that, and then you just go whoop. In fact, you can put your finger in there. Just go rat, 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 and then hopefully break it off, and it comes off. And you get a much nicer edge. However, I don't really care. And the reason I don't care is because I'm using heat shrink for this job. So let's pull these sheaths off. Now, right, we're going to take the blue shielding off, the metallic shielding, and pull that back. Now, different KNX cables have got different things inside, and this one has got a metal, little draw wire. I think that actually serves a function, perhaps. I think, oh, this is a different cable. So this one's actually, you can see this is more twisted, and it's got 2 pieces of string and some see-through plastic and some blue metallic sheathing around it. This one didn't. Actually, I think this is probably better quality cable, but it's a bit more difficult to work with. I'm just going to strip it all out. One thing that I will warn is that I can't even see with my naked eye. So, oh, I can actually. So I will show you by grabbing the camera. In here, zoom. Can we see? No, I'm not seeing it on there, but we're looking, yeah, can you see that little glistening thing just above this finger here? Yeah, anyway, that's a tiny piece of copper. It's very, very, very small diameter, but it's a single core in there. Just, and if you shove your finger in that direction, or you catch it, you don't cut it back far enough, it can cause your finger a bit of a bleed. It's not going to be particularly tragic if that happens, but it's not particularly nice, and it hurts a bit actually, I have to say. Anyway, back to the job in hand. So I'm taking a very, very, very long time about this because I'm just talking so much. Now, one thing that I like to do is I like to pre-prepare heat shrink. Now the heat shrink that I'm using is this Wi-Fi. This is really decent quality heat shrink. I'm really pleased with it. And this is the exact right diameter. This is 3:1. That's the shrink ratio, and that's the key. You don't want to get 2:1 for this job. You want to get 3:1. And you want the adhesive lined, which makes it stick really well. And the diameter that I'm going for is 9.5. That's the diameter that's often mentioned in the specs. But this stuff is really, really good. I really rate it. So that's the stuff that I'm using. Anyway, heat shrink goes on, and heat shrink goes on. I'm just going to leave them there and forget about them. Now what I like to do is split the yellow and the white, yellow, white, and then I bring the red back down and then bring the yellow and white back together again, because that's how this cable works. So I've got black at the top back, red at the bottom back, white at the top front, and yellow at the top bottom. And then I'm actually stripping before I'm doing the heat shrink. The reason for that is if you heat shrink and then you accidentally kind of get a lot of heat on the tips of these, sometimes it shrivels away and then you can never really see how much you're stripping off. So I always strip off first, like so. I'll kind of really separate them. Now my way of doing it, you could use automatic wire strippers, but these are much better for me. And you're going to see I go into the second hole, so you can see the holes on here. And in my case, I'm going into the 0.8, which is the second hole. So I'm lining that up, and then as you look down, I'm getting the, let's pop that in the second hole there. And can you see how much I'm stripping off? I'm stripping off the bit of white poking out there is approximately the exact, well, it looks, I'm eyeballing it, it looks exactly the same thickness as each blade of the strippers. So I'm kind of using the blades of the strippers as a way to determine the length. I'm going to go a bit more on that one. So there's one, and in there again, and there's two, and into the correct one, and there's three, and here is four, and that's one done. And I'm going to do these other ones. I'm going to untwist them completely in the case where they're twisted. And where they're twisted, you see they go wonky, so I'm going to straighten them out like network cables, like the cores of your Cat 6. And these are equally annoying. There we go, and get them straightened out nicely. And now, because they were twisted, they're all different lengths. So I am going to put them in the right order. So what was it? black at the top, back, and yellow. Is it yellow? Let's go here. So it's, yeah, black, red, yellow, white. Doesn't matter as long as they're the same. So yellow at the top and white at the bottom. Yellow at the top. Nope. Yellow at the top, white at the bottom, black at the back, top, red at the... Yeah. So all of this, doesn't matter how messy it is because I'm heat shrinking it. So I've put those in the correct order, and I'm going to bring them all in together. Straighten them out a bit better. And then I'm going to snip these ones because they're more or less the same size. I am going to snip them with the snippers, which is the technical term for scissors. Boom. There we go. Right, now let's strip them. Let's part them again. Go with the second one. I'm doing exactly the same with this KNX cable, even though it's a different type of cable. Black at the bottom, black at the top, red at the bottom, at the rear, and then it was white at the top and yellow at the bottom. At least that's what this one is. This is different, so I'm going to have to switch them around. And this is good. There we go. Right, now they're all done. Pop this away in the pocket, and this is where I get my very cheap and cheerful Black & Decker heat gun. And pull this out, straighten them out a bit. Now what I've been doing is I've been measuring with my ruler approximately 20 millimeters back from the end. Can you see that? You can't quite. So if I line that up with about 20 millimeters, and then I'll mark it off, because I'll just do that for this. I'll mark 20 mil off on the white one, that'll do. And then I'm going to eyeball the rest. So this is why I just bring that to this. This, by the way, I've cut these 30 millimeters long, or 35 or even 40. So I'm going to do that, and then heat shrink it. It's actually better to start this machine before you apply it, so that the end gets hot, rather than going in cold. And this is a really, really good quality of heat shrink. I really like it. And get it from underneath as well, and a bit from the side. And it doesn't appear to be shrinking fabulously on this. Don't point it towards your own skin, because that's stupid. There we go, that's done. That was way over the top. And let's do this one. Yeah, I've kind of overdone that actually, it's a bit too hot. If you overdo it too much, the sheath around the insulation around the wires kind of makes all four stick to each other. So you want to kind of keep them apart for that. So black at the top, red at the bottom, white at the top, and yellow at the bottom. Let's do that. Get them vaguely in order, pull the shrink up, and then just eyeball it so that they're about the same. Hold it with my thumb, get it out of the way. This is good, nice directional baffle on this particular gun. So you can put your thumb near it and it doesn't hurt. Right, there we go. That'll do. Put that down. Unfortunately we've got a dog, so the dog's just come in. So I want to keep that well away from the dog. Right, now we're good to get some of these things out. I start with a yellow-white one. It's a bit hot, so I'll just let them cool down. Yeah, I'm doing much more of a song and dance about this on YouTube than I would in real life. I'll just get it done a bit quicker. But now with this, it's still a bit hot. Look, this one is slightly above this one, isn't it? So I'm going to put this one into the second one up, and the other one into the first one up from the bottom. Now, what I often do is actually, what I definitely do is I bend them back. So actually, I've said that wrong. I put this in the top one in the very top, and the next one down. So not on the bottom two, but the top two. So that goes in there. Boop. and you push it in. There we go, you can feel it positively go in. Now I should have done this one first because it's a bit more difficult, but I'll just turn it around and do it this way. Get these red and black out of the way so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to part these a little bit and shove them in, and sometimes you can't really get them in. These are going in really easily. There we go, and that really did, you had this positive push it home feel where it just went like that, and that's really good. I'm very confident with that, so I don't need to do anything else. But sometimes I'll come in with these and just push each individual core in. I'll get my red and blacks out. Actually, I've got a pack still. The valuable red and blacks, which seem to be running out of. And there it is. Wago 243, and then there's different numbers after that. Right, so what I do now is I kind of get these lined up, and then I'm folding this back on itself so it's well out of the way. Yeah, and you can see why I did it in those two, so that it folds back really nicely. If I'd done it in these two, it doesn't fold back as nicely and neatly. I hope that makes sense. It was a bit random thought. So let's get this round this way, and it doesn't matter so much with these. So I'll start with the bottom ones, and I do find the black and red a bit more difficult because once you've done this one, these are a bit more difficult. Let's get it in. Let's get it in anyway. See what happens. Let's shove. Yeah, I didn't get so much of a good feeling about the red there. And use my finger. And once you start pushing down, you risk these kind of bending back on themselves, and it's a bit rubbish. So kind of hold both here and push, and then inspect. Now I'm going to inspect with my camera, and you can't really see for light here, unfortunately, can you? Why are you barking? Don't tell me you put a ball in the hole. You have not. Well, you'll never get that out, will you? You idiot dog. Oh, that really is very dumb of you, Truffle. What? Yeah, so I didn't so much pause the video there as just completely stop filming, and I think I went to have dinner. By the way, this is not my cabinet. I'm somewhere else. Yeah, so the only thing that I have to add to what you saw, because I pretty much got to the end of the process, is that after doing a really nice job of the heat shrink and making it look really pretty, I actually kind of go ahead and erase that prettiness by just binding both of the green KNX cables in electrical insulation tape. And included in that loop of insulation tape, I have put the yellow and white KNX plug. By the way, that's not used in a lot of KNX installations, but it's good practice to terminate it in the back box. Obviously, it's a bus system, so if you don't terminate it, the next one along won't get the signal. And if ever you did end up using it, then you'd have to go and take all your back boxes apart and do that termination at a later date. So it's really good practice to do that at the time. As for the so the reason I put the insulation tape around that is to just kind of prevent snags. Also, by binding the two green cables together, I think it will prevent one cable maybe pulling harder than the other on the black and red, which is the important one, and pulling out of that. So that is my rationale behind that. The only other thing to add is, for the Cat 6 or the Cat 5, whatever you've got going into the back box, I don't recommend that you terminate at all unless you actually need to. So in the case, I don't know if you remember the grey brick backdrop with the 3 KNX cables coming in, the one where I've got no kind of slack on the cables because it's not a stud wall, it's a block wall. On that occasion, I have actually installed one of these touch panels which does use Cat 6, and I was able to get the terminated KNX cable plus the Cat 6 plus the rear section of this touch panel into the back box with no problem. And I'm really, really pleased, and I think that's a testament to the fact that this is probably the best way of doing the wiring. But you have to push for that 47mm back box. Don't go with 35mm. It's just not enough for future proofing. Anyway, these are all my thoughts and my theories and my ideas. I have thought about it for many years about how I wanted to do this, so I do think it's pretty sensible. But I'd be very interested in hearing. I would propose that this is the way that everyone does it, but I'm also open-minded enough to hear that I'm wrong. So please leave your comments below, and like, comment, subscribe, and all that jazz. Thanks for watching.